Everyone knows how complex and important pharmaceutical patent law in the United States has been. After all, each of us were asked to study and attempt to come up with a solution for this issue during Special Programs Day. The issue of patent retention and its effects has drawn support from many sides. Some want to see the system kept in place or even expanded upon in order to increase innovation, which I think we can all agree is a very worthy cause given our nation's current situation where we're trying to find a vaccine for COVID 19. Others want to see the patent term lengths reduced so that generic competitors can jump into the market and drive down prices for consumers. This is a very interesting issue that affects countless individuals, and we chose it in order to shed a bit more light on its global effects. In 1984, the United States passed the Hatch-Waxman Act, which was supposed to revolutionize the way American pharmaceutical patents work. This act was passed to limit the power brand name pharmaceuticals had within America's medicinal drug market. But the Hatch-Waxman Act also contains many loopholes which allow the big name players to stifle the generic markets. This has led to monopolies on certain patents for periods much longer than anticipated. The issue at hand happens to affect me personally, as I have a peanut allergy. I'm prescribed to use an EpiPen, but a few years ago the price of the product got way out of hand. I was forced to go without the product. Uh, Luckily, I've never had to use an EpiPen, but a situation could have easily arisen where I was in dire need of that medication, which I didn't have any access to at the time. The monopolies formed as a result of the Hatch-Waxman Act have created an environment in which pharmaceuticals are much too expensive in the States, which has led many Americans to seek alternative solutions. One of these solutions, which has become increasingly prominent in recent years, is medical tourism. Medical tourism is defined as international border crossing for healthcare and services. It has become very common for Americans seeking to avoid paying top dollar for medications. The country that has seen the largest uptick in medical tourism from Americans is Mexico, in which pharmacies serve well over 1 million Americans annually. Pharmaceutical patent law has had a profound effect on our unfamiliar community, which is Mexican doctors and pharmacists. In order to meet the new demand from American citizens, Mexican healthcare professionals have changed the way they go about doing their business in order to cater more towards all this new American demand. This public policy issue is heavily implicated with the various ideologies and doctrines that we have covered in this class, including the Rousseauist equality narrative, the Lockean liberty narrative, as well as Catholic social teaching. One key aspect of the Lockean liberty narrative is the idea that once one's labor is applied to something, that thing becomes theirs. While corporations were not commonplace when John Locke was alive, we can certainly appropriate it to fit today's standards. If a company puts time and effort into creating a drug, then the patent license should belong solely to that company if we follow that sort of idea. On the other hand, patents are obviously a hindrance to competition, which is greatly valued by Lockeans as essential to the furtherment of the technological project. There is no clear solution to this issue posed by the Lockean narrative, but as both competition and innovation hold weight within the eyes of Lockeans. But this is still a very pressing issue for the narrative. The most central commitments that serve as the very basis of the Rousseauist equality narrative are community, solidarity, and the equality of outcome for all. A large part of the Rousseauist narrative is ensuring both the mental and physical health of all people. This belief that all are entitled to live comfortably and happily in community with others certainly leads those who subscribe to the narrative to be greatly concerned with the American pharmaceutical patent system and its effects. Given the Rousseauist equality narrative is at odds with capitalism, Rousseauists would certainly advocate that companies that produce pharmaceuticals be made public so that they can serve the greater good. However, it is difficult to predict whether or not Rousseauists would support patents themselves. Patents are, of course, a byproduct of capitalism, but their purpose is not to further capitalism. They act as a sort of inhibitor that attempts to balance the efficiency of capitalism with the need for innovation. While Rousseauists certainly condemn capitalism and the competition that it incentivizes, they approve of patent law. as at least it restrains the competitiveness which they deem to be detrimental to society, even if it does not eradicate it. Overall, when it pertains to the inner workings of the American pharmaceutical patent system, the Rousseau's equality narrative pushes that the private healthcare system be ousted in favor of a government run system that is better equipped to focus solely on the needs of the people. The most basic goal of Catholic social teaching is ensuring the health and well being of all humanity. The Catholic Church proclaims that human life is sacred and that human dignity serves as the foundation of a moral vision for society. It would be impossible to protect human health and dignity at this day and age without the medical advances that have arisen from the pharmaceutical industry. There is no official stance on the American pharmaceutical patent system held by the Catholic Church, but the importance that the issue holds to the Church is evident through the impact it has on human health and dignity. The Church and its teachings are not indifferent to this issue in the slightest, but they have not yet formed a resolution for the problem. Part of the reason that the public policy issue remains in the headlines is that there is no clear way to go about solving the problems that it presents. By promoting the generic market, we lower the prices of drugs for consumers, but also encourage less innovation, which may lead to less cutting-edge drugs and vaccines being produced. And by promoting the big drug companies, we encourage innovation, but we also jeopardize the lives of consumers by making them deal with sky-high prices. There's no clear way to proceed when addressing this issue, but we do our best in our paper to go in depth about several factors and possible routes we could take to really solve this issue. From the perspective of the Mexican doctors and pharmacists who are affected by this issue, the current configuration of the American pharmaceutical patent system is viewed as a very good thing in general. The high costs that the system inflicts on Americans brings a steady flow of new customers into Mexican institutions with the intent of buying products. The American system helps to promote generic medication production within Mexico, enabling Mexican healthcare workers to sell their products at extraordinarily low costs. However, Mexican doctors and pharmacists would most definitely like to see the global patent laws be relaxed. Such a change in public policy would allow for an increase in the types of drugs that can be produced and sold in Mexico. Any change in public policy that results in the relaxation of pharmaceutical patent law would be more than welcome for Mexican healthcare professionals, as it would free up the possibility for the production and sale of a greater volume and variety of generic drugs within the country. When comparing the author's point of view with the Mexican healthcare professional's point of view, it seems like both sort of want the same thing. Both parties wouldn't mind maintaining the status quo, but the reasonings differ. For us, there is currently no known alternative for the current system when it comes to balancing the needs of consumers and drug companies. And the current system works reasonably well. For our unfamiliar community, the current system brings them a great deal of business and it promotes their way of life. Both us and Mexican healthcare professionals can also agree that the current system seems to encourage rent-seeking practices among pharmaceutical companies, who tend to set prices unreasonably high over the course of their patents. If those practices were stopped, it would allow for much more domestic and international competition, which would lower drug prices for Americans while raising profits for Mexican healthcare professionals.